Okay, we're joined today again, as usual, by Pat McGart. How are you, Pat?
Grand, Jude, how are you?
I'm fine. I gather you have bought yourself a new Huawei phone, so every
Yeah,
single word we say is probably being reported straight
yeah,
to
straight,
straight
straight,
to
straight.
China.
So, well, that's what the Americans would have you believe. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but it's working well. Are you pleased with your purchase?
yeah. Very well. Well,
Yeah.
Jude, the one I had, the previous set was about 6 years old, and it
Uh,
was right out with smoke signals. So I've now joined the high tech world.
okay, good. Well, we're going to talk about two articles today. One of them was in the Irish Times on Wednesday, and it was by Michael McDowell, a man that we all know and love. Um, and he's essentially saying that there are people who want the government to double down on their efforts to suppress the virus. They want to sort of eradicate it
Yeah,
from Ireland before you start telling people to go back to work and all the rest of it. And he points out to the flaws in that. He says you take a lorry driver coming from Germany, he's going to be going through England, he's going to then come in through the north, and then he's going to go down to Dublin. And he says, the fact is that he could well be carrying the virus, so that the whole notion of eradicating it is sort of impossible. There are all sorts of groups that are more prone to infection than others, so it'd be better thinking in that nuanced way. And he says, in the end, governments have to make a sort of a judgment in economical terms versus health terms. It's a hard one, but I think for once in my life I agree with McDowell that if you don't let people out, you're going to have the economy absolutely down the toilet, and people are going to die because of that. What do you think?
Jude, I think some of I was reading the last day, and I think everybody's been reading the economics. Britain is, I think, something like 11.5% down the economy. Now we grew for some reason 1.5 in the first quarter or something like that, which is amazing. But the reality is we simply can't keep on everything shut down. We'll be back to bows and arrows if that's the way, economically speaking, if that's the way it's going. And I don't think there's a couple of guys on at RT regularly, and one of them is Sam McConkey, who I have great time for. He's professor at Trinity College, and he's a very sensible man, very down to earth. And he was on the other day, and he said, "Look, it's inevitable that it will come back at some time." But basically, if I'm to paraphrase him, he's saying that they hope the next time when it comes back, they'll know so much more about it that they'll be able to handle it in a different way. But he says it is almost impossible to eradicate. To eradicate it would mean we all sit in our own houses and nobody moves for 6 months, and that's impossible. That's not going to happen. Now, what they hope they have is they've got it under control.
Yeah. Are you moving out in recent days, Pat, any more than you have at the beginning?
Yeah, Jude, absolutely. And by the way, Jude, I live in any shown in Donegal, and like it's not the metropolis or anything, but the number of vehicles on the road in recent days has trebled, absolutely trebled. And by the way, a hell of a lot of them are from the north. I was down in by Buncrana, the other side of Buncrana, yesterday, sorry, and every second car was Northern Ireland. So I presume people from the north are starting to move out as well.
Mm-hmm.
The economy is starting to open up. Shops are opening up and all that.
Yeah, that was a point that McDowell made too, that you'd have to have the North and the South in absolute unison in order to have any movement towards sort of ring fencing whatever policies you'd implement. That if the North is a different one from the South, the South won't hold water, it'll be full of holes,
Yeah, I think Diane Dodds was on The View last night with Mark Carruthers, and he really made the same point you're just after making, that if they were out of lockstep, she's, I think, the Minister for Tourism and all that sort of stuff, and he says if the south of Ireland hotels open, all the people in the north will be booking holidays in the south, but there'll be no reciprocation. Yeah. Whereas if holidays, Jude, well, a lot of people in the south now want to go to the north because they've all been to Kerry, and most of them have, well, been to Dublin. But I've only been up the Glens of Antrim, which are stunningly beautiful, and so on. And there's a lot of lovely places that you can go in the north that people haven't been, like the Giant's Causeway, Ballycastle, and all that sort of stuff. So, Northern Ireland's got a product to sell. It's it's the last part of Ireland probably hasn't really been explored by many people. Like if you talk to anybody from Limerick and they ask them, "Have you ever been to Northern Ireland?" They're almost going, "What?" It's like, so it's like if the trouble stays away, there's a big market because in Northern Ireland is the last of the unexplored territories.
Diana, see, this is the reason that Joel doesn't say this, but I think he implies it, that the reason the North and the South are out of sync is the fact that the North particularly doesn't want to be seen as anything other than a part of the UK. And any notion of sort of marching in step with the South is suggesting that its unionism is weakened. Yeah. Did she talk about that? I mean, did she seem to be in favor?
No, you got the party line. We will be following the medical advice and the advice of the experts, the usual. But there was a sort of a tacit admittance that they would also try and keep with the Republic. Jude, we're one island. A bird doesn't know the difference between North and the South. The radio waves don't know the difference, and neither does a virus. So the rubbish that but Jude, I remember very clearly, and I don't know. I remember Hume coming and telling me one time that Paisley, the Republic had got something from the EU. I'm talking about 25 years ago, and Paisley had come to him behind the scenes and said, "John, can we get the same for the North?" And I said, "John, why don't you go public with that?" And he says, "Well, look, what's the point?" He said, "All I'm going to do is embarrass Paisley and put him further into his trench." Mm-hmm. Like, this is one island, and you can drop the politics for all. If it's good for Joe and Donegal, it's probably good for Sammy and Derry or wherever the hell it is. Pardon the stereotypes, but that's the way it's going to work.
Well, the case has been proven with regard to the notion of business being on an all-Ireland basis, because nobody, apart maybe from some of the DUP, think that a border where you're going to have different tariffs and so on is a good idea in Ireland. And I think they're coming round to the point where they're seeing how they really have to have a unitary health system, because there is quite a bit of interchange. Like the man next door to me got his hip, I think both his hips done in Mullingar. There's a lot of, for a variety of reasons, there are movements from patients from the north to the south, and I think maybe even the other way around as well.
Yeah, well, and if you're in Donegal, up until recently anyway, a lot of cancer services were in andthe. And I think as the top heart specialists for the all of Ireland now in Dublin.
Yeah. I mean, what kind of idiot would it be that would say, "Oh, there's a border here. All right, they've got a cancer service in andthe, but I'm not going to use it."
Yeah, on the basis that the cancer service knows whether you're a Catholic or a Protestant or a nationalist or a unionist. Does it care?
Yeah. Okay, let's move on for reasons of time to the second one, which is actually from the Phoenix, which is, not everybody knows about the Phoenix, but I think it's a wonderful magazine. It's a satirical magazine published in Dublin, and it's very similar to Private Eye. It really looks at matters financial and particularly political. And this is an article it did on the social media and the way the social media is regarded in the South. And it talks about the fact that, for example, when Obama was elected, they said that he was elected as the first social media president of the United States. And he said that, for example, when Brian Cowen had his fall from grace, he says that it was Simon Coveney's tweet about what he calls Garglegate.
Yeah, that's where he did the interview after having a big night.
And that's what sealed his fate. He also points to the Irish Times, and he says the Irish Times, who have long held their nose and chastised the rabble who would contaminate public debate with social media. Yeah. So he's very critical of the Irish Times in terms, and even the mainstream media, of the way that they regard social media. They see it as being contaminated and irrational and all sorts of things. And he mentions the case, I hadn't thought of this, but he mentions Gerry Adams on Twitter. And he says the former Sinn Féin president's outlandish postings have greatly disarmed critics who have all but given up trying to make sense of it.
Gerry talks, I am not a Twitter fan. Does that make me a Twitterati? As opposed to a glitterati? Apparently Gerry talks about hugging trees and all this, and no, I don't follow him. So
he talks about,
but Jude, there's an awful lot of snobbery involved. Years ago, I remember being on a radio debate with a journalist who thought it was disgraceful what social media was doing to the debate in the country, and I thought, how hypocritical from a journalist to come out with a line like that. Look at right Britain, Murdoch. They're talking about debate being debased and social political intercourse or discourse being messed about and all the rest. Right, but the public discourse. Murdoch owned the Sun, 4 million copies sold every morning, and he had an agenda. So was the political discourse then, or the public discourse, not getting skewed there? In the south of Ireland, Tony O'Reilly owned the Sunday Independent, the Irish Independent, and they have pursued an agenda totally in favour of the right-wing people in Ireland, totally anti-Sinn Féin, anti the working class, and all the rest. They used to have a back page where you dined out in what restaurant and all this sort of
Well, tell me this: if you were still editor of the
stuff.
Derry Journal,
Wait a minute, what's this?
huh?
Yeah, you froze there for a minute, Jude.
Sorry. I'm saying, if you were still editor of the Derry Journal, would you still welcome the encroachments of the social media?
Not at all, no, because I can see where that's going.
Where is it going then? Where is it going?
It's Jude. There, years ago, people were willing to wait for their news.
Yeah.
But I remember even we could see it. Like, look at the Belfast Telegraph in the 1950s and 60s. Had something like 150,000 circulation. By the time UTV had their 6 o'clock news and BBC had the 6 o'clock news, the Belfast Telegraph circulation was dropping like a stone. The newspapers couldn't compete. And, in fact, even today, the broadcast media like television can't compete even with social media, because people have things up on within 10 minutes of them happen on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, that's the point you made, that Simon Coveney's tweet was up about Brian Cowan long before the mainstream media had it. And he sort of ends it by saying that he says that there was a sort of inquiry into the 2016 election in the South. And he says they came to the conclusion that social media hadn't really affected the outcome of the election. And the quotation from the Phoenix is, 4 years later, that's now, there is an emerging appreciation that online campaigning must be tackled seriously in future and focus, and not least, as Sinn Féin won the popular vote, despite the print and broadcasting frenzy that party was subject to during the general election. He's arguing that Sinn Féin was during the election very prevalent on social media, but he said that was because they were popular, not the other way around. That they didn't have a big online presence, and that made them popular.
It always comes down to, does the media lead public opinion, or does the media reflect public opinion? The biggest thing by a mile I saw from Sinn Féin leading into the last election was Peter Story on about insurance.
And
I think that. Well, the thing about Sinn Féin was Sinn Féin's voter. They have never been in power, and they are probably the party that most attracts young people. Young people are the people who are most into technology. Like me and you, Jude, with the greatest respect, they're on. We're not of the Instagram generation or all that. See, my kids all know how they can jump from one phone to another. They can stream. I don't even know what stream means half the time, and all this. Right, Sinn Féin seems to have got that cohort of people. They are the technology people. They're all basically under 40. And if you want change, if you're fed up with Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and Labour, the same old three parties have been in power, or variations of it, since the foundation of the state. Sinn Féin are the new young party. They're Mary Lou McDonald and Pierce Doherty and all that. So that's the generation. So who's leading? Who's leading? Is it the technology, or is it Sinn Féin? Which one?
Okay. Well, I'll not answer that, but I'll tell you that we're only at 10 seconds each left. And the one thing I would say is, if the social media were very strong, Sinn Féin did very well the last time around, how come they're not going to be in government? Because there's going to be a deal clinched this weekend, almost certainly, between Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, and the Greens. So social media doesn't seem to have got them into power, at least. So do you want to take 10 seconds to comment on that?
Yeah, but that's politics. You have to cobble a deal together, and if Sinn Féin can't do it, that's that. And with the respect, that is Sinn Féin's problem.
Okay. Thanks, Pat. Talk to you again then.
Bye. Talk to you again,
Look
Jude.
after that Huawei phone.